Hey guys, this is Alan with a brand new episode of Devil May Play.
Hey guys, Trip here, and what the fuck is Nintendo doing? But first, Lark, what have you been playing? What have you been up to?
I have been up to a lot of stuff. Baby classes, that's one thing, but I'll save that for later. That'll be my tale at the end. And I've been playing a few games. I got Final Fantasy 15,
All right.
and Watch Dogs 2, but both of those I kind of just touched for a few hours. And then I got The Last Guardian as a Christmas gift. So I've been playing that the most because that's the shortest game. So I figure, beat the shortest game and then kind of work your way down. Although Final Fantasy 15's kind of got me hooked on the bromance. Um, that's the first thing I noticed about that game. I'm like, I don't know if you saw this, and I'm gonna put this in the shout out, but Conan did the Clueless Gamer. He did an episode on Final Fantasy 15, and he hated it. And I kind of understand why, because the game is just like, oh, like there's not really anything that's driving you in the first few hours. You're kind of just like, oh, I'm just on a road trip and I'm gonna go attack these things. And it's like this. I did a quest for a fucking cat. I literally did a quest where I had to catch a fish, and then get someone to cook it for a cat. And I was like, I love this game because
You
it's
know what that you know what that reminds me of though?
what's that?
It reminds me of another game which has a similar problem, not problem, depending on how you look at it. Dragon Age Inquisition. Now, I began hating that game.
Yeah.
That's one of the first, I think the only game I ever played where I started out hating it and then I grew to love it.
Hmm.
And I think it goes back to that kind of MMO-ish syndrome some of these
Mm.
games I don't know if you could say suffer from, because like I said, like I grew to love it and I'm not really sure if I would have liked it more or less with or without those features. But
Sure.
I think it comes down to especially in the early hours of the game, it really comes down to pacing and strong characters.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's kind of what Final Fantasy 15, like the combat is really fun, and then the bromance is it's pretty exciting. And then The Last Guardian, I wanted to throw a few thoughts out there since I'm sure a lot of other people have talked about this at length. I'll just say it like this. I don't understand why everyone is talking about how difficult Trico is to command, because that is, to me, for my few hours playing this game, that is not the difficult part. The camera is fucking abysmal. Like, just I haven't encountered a camera this bad in video games in, like, I can't remember the last time. It's horrible. Like, you are fighting it the entire time, and then the kid, like, I don't know his name. They probably don't have a name for him, but the kid that like controls Trico or has a journey with him or whatever. He is so difficult to control because there's not like a grab button when you're crawling around Trico. So if you try to jump, half the time he just grabs back onto Trico, like if you're trying to jump onto a ledge. And then
Right.
if you
And
try and let go, you can let go, but then he just falls flat on his face. Like there's no animation for him to like recover. He just is like crawling and then lets go and then falls on his back, and then you're like, what the hell? Like it's just whoever did the animations for this character, I'm annoyed by it. Like the way he runs, the way he climbs, I'm just like it's like the worst ragdoll physics I've ever seen. I'm like, come on, dude. Like, so
I
Trico, I don't have a problem with him. It's the kid in the camera are like way worse, in my opinion.
Two things. One, isn't this made by the same people who made Shadow of the Colossus, where a lot of the game revolves around you climbing on things?
Hmm.
You'd think they would have had that figured out by now. And the second thing, I find it funny that we're still having camera issues in 2017.
Dude,
I mean,
you just don't know. And then there was a
came
glitch.
from a time when where we didn't even have a second controller on like the Nintendo 64, and like
Yeah.
I didn't have. I mean, like some games did have big camera problems, but like they weren't like I don't remember Legend of Zelda being that egregious in the camera department, and they didn't even have a second joystick for the camera.
Yeah.
So it's just funny to me that that's still happening.
Well, then, and also, I didn't even say this, but I also had a game breaking glitch, which there was a cutscene that was happening, and I didn't realize it was a cutscene. I tried to do a screen capture with the PS4 share button, and then the game crashed. And then I tried to load it again, and like I basically turned off the PS4 because I thought it had like frozen, and then it corrupted the data file. So then I had to basically reinstall the game. So luckily, it fixed the problem, but for a couple times I try and load it and then it would just load and you'd see like Trico for a second and then the screen would just go black and you could hear everything And I was like, oh my God.
That right there is some
It's
shit
like,
that like I should have experienced on a PC. Like we
yeah,
talked about this before
I know.
off mic, but it's just it goes back to our episode a couple weeks ago about consoles and how consoles and PCs are kind of merging, but in the worst ways possible.
Right.
Like instead of getting the best of both worlds, we're with consoles, we're kind of getting the worst.
No,
And
I
that's kind of an
agree.
example of it.
Yeah, the get like bugs like, and the thing is, I don't know whether I caused it by turning off the PS4, which I'm assuming I that is my fault. But the thing was, the screen like froze for a good like minute, and so I thought, okay, the game's frozen. I got to turn off the PS4. Well, I guess it was in the middle of a save, so that's why I corrupted a data file. And then every time I tried to load, like I could continue playing, and then I stopped playing, and then when I tried to reload that save point, it's just a mess. But you're right, and I mean the only saving grace for this game is that it is a really cool concept and it is really fun when it works, and you just
That's
kind
a
of get
big
used to
caveat.
that. Like the camera is abysmal, but you're just after a while you just get used to how to control it. To basically you have to be controlling it the whole time essentially because it won't follow the character the right way, and it'll zoom out and it'll get stuck in walls and all that stuff. So you just kind of get used to it after a while, but it really is kind of
It
it's
sounds like you're
unacceptable.
describing an abusive relationship.
Yeah,
Like, you
maybe.
know, she hits
There's good
me
times
and
too.
she yells at me all the time, but if you can just learn to accept that, she has good aspects and you just learn to grit and bear the bad stuff.
Well, and I think that's what it is. I everyone that's complaining about Trico is just not patient enough, and that's weird because I am not a patient person. But I if I were to score it, I would definitely dock some points for like controls and camera. Like it does detract from the game. So, but anyways, moving on. We're not talking about the Last Guardian. We're talking about Nintendo's fuck ups.
And there are so many of them, aren't
All
there?
right. So first of all, and I just want to put a disclaimer here because, as always, these are our opinions, and we don't want anyone that's excited for the Switch to be less excited. Okay, we don't care if if you've already bought your Switch and you're ready to go with your Nintendo Go, fine. But it's our job to pick apart what we think is unfathomably stupid.
Yeah.
Starting with, let's just start with online. Let's just start with that because Nintendo has historically had a problem with their online services going back to the Wii, really. And when they put out Super Smash Brothers Brawl, the terrible latency, the terrible connection issues with that. Like Nintendo has never prioritized, online play. In
I
fact,
don't
Satoru Iwata said that it was a fad back in like I think late 90s, early 2000s. I don't know the exact date, but he thought online gaming was a fad. And he said
I don't
Nintendo doesn't follow fads. So,
Oh yeah, right, with the motion controls and shit.
mhm.
Fuck off. But anyway, like I don't understand. I know everybody thinks this, but it really baffles me. I don't understand their decisions. And I've been thinking about this ever since you said you wanted to do this episode. I've been trying to wrap my head around the why of all this.
Because
And
Nintendo.
but yeah, but everybody says that, but I feel like this is fascinating from like a not to sound all like, high and mighty intellectual, but from like a sheer like psychological perspective, why they behave this way. And I guess I hate to say this, but like maybe some of it may be cultural. And like you see similar things with Konami, for example, but
Sure.
at least Nintendo still makes good games. But you see similar things with a lot of Japanese companies or Japanese divisions of international companies. You see this a lot. And I don't know if there's a lot of pride and incompetence going on in the higher levels of these companies, but I honestly feel like there's a lot of egos. This is the only explanation. If you guys in the audience have a better explanation for this, then by all means, because I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. I'm just desperate for some sort of explanation.
You
The
just want
only
to
thing
know
I can
why. Why
I have to
Nintendo?
know why. The only thing I can come up with is that, like, I was talking to my friends the other day, and we all went to the same college or go to the same college still, and I was saying that Nintendo is a lot like the administration of my school or my school in general. There's incredible people on the lower levels, like in my school's case, the teachers, and in Nintendo's case, people who are actually designing the games and the programmers and the creators and all that. But then there's this shadowy upper level of people trying to compensate for their tiny dicks, or just with a lot of pride and egos and incompetency. There must be a ton of bureaucracy, a ton of red tape, a ton of weird policies and ritual and, stuff that they've been doing for years that they don't want to change. Or, like you said, they think that internet is a fad and maybe they don't want to admit they were wrong with that. And just all of these weird policies they are convinced will work, even though facts tell them otherwise. And it's just dragging the entire institution down.
Hmm.
And that's honestly the only thing I can think of as to why they would do this. Like the thing that really got me, Lark.
Well, first, before we get into it, I just want to say I'm going to offer a counterpoint, just because I don't. As far as the why, I mean, we say because Nintendo, but what we really are saying is that they have a philosophy. Okay, they have, like you said, I don't know if it's shadowy. They've been very open about their decision-making process. Like you said, they have a few creators. Satoru Iwata, rest in peace. He took responsibility for the failures of the Wii U, which is why he took pay cuts. They have a few people like Shigeru Miyamoto, right, who are their powerhouse creatives. But even he has lost his touch a little bit along the way. I'm talking about Wii Music. Anybody that played that fucking game, I don't know why you would think that was a great game. Like they put that out right at the same time as Rock Band and Guitar Hero, and I don't know if that was necessarily their response. But my point is they don't look to competition at all. I remember reading an article about somebody who was trying to help them set up the Wii's online infrastructure, and they were asking Nintendo, well, we could do it like Xbox Live and PlayStation Network, and they had no idea how either of those services worked. So they're too insular is the TLDR of it. They are so insular, and they base a lot of their decisions off tradition. So this is the way we've been doing it. This is the way we're going to keep doing it. Or they just don't. But that same insularity, what the problem is they aren't going to do what Microsoft did with the Xbox One, which is listen to the fans, realize they made a huge mistake, and change things quickly. Yeah. It is too late for them to make these massive system-wide changes in 2 months. I'm talking about specifically with the online infrastructure. They don't listen to fans. That is probably their biggest problem. Sometimes it serves them well where they can think outside the box because they aren't necessarily doing what everyone else is doing. And then sometimes it bites them in the ass because other people are like, this has already been perfected. Like, we already know what to expect. You aren't improving this. You're just doing it a worse way. Like, you're trying to reinvent the wheel, but the wheel's already fucking invented. Like, just use the wheel.
That weird mixture of, again, a worst of both worlds scenario of insularity, tradition, and innovation for the sake of innovation. That's not even really innovation. I mean,
let's true. Wait, say that again.
You said how it
insularity,
insularity and tradition, but also innovation for the sake of innovation. That's not really innovation. And let's just call it for what it is. They're fucking hipsters.
I mean, I guess so.
That's like what you were just describing. That's what it is. They're trying to be different for the sake of being different.
I think you hit the nail on the head, though. That they are insular. They do follow like tradition. Like that's why I said like if you look at the interaction between Nintendo of America and Nintendo of Japan, Nintendo of America just does whatever Nintendo of Japan says, right? They don't have any control over the creative processes. They don't have the ability to give feedback and say, well, Western audiences don't really, vibe with this. Nintendo just doesn't flat out don't care. And then like the innovation for the sake of innovation, sure, the gamepad was an interesting concept, but guess what? It didn't really enhance games. It's the same thing as the Kinect. Like,
let's talk about Star Fox.
But anyways, so I'm sorry I cut you off. You were about to go into I think the specifics of the problems with the online infrastructure. If you want to do that,
I was well, it's part of the online thing, but it's really the thing in general that's done to me the most. That really made me start to question their motivations and why they would do something like this. It's a thing that really kind of made me lose my mind for a couple seconds, not in the sense of I was angry, but actually like I feel like reality stopped making sense to me for a moment because I could not reconcile my perception of the universe with any human being making this decision. Some of you in the audience may already know what I'm talking about. The whole app thing, the whole handling like online communication on your fucking cell phone.
It gets worse.
With your own set of
It gets worse though.
With your own set of headphones where I mean, first off, like the thing that they didn't even notice is if you have your headphones in to listen to people, you can't hear the fucking game. But also, tell us how it gets worse, because I know a bit more about this, but I haven't had it in front of me. But please, I'm sure
I don't know how far this goes. I don't know how far this goes, but I've heard that the matchmaking and lobbies will also be done on an app.
Yes. Okay. I didn't want to say that in case it wasn't true.
I don't know the extent of it, but I'm pretty certain that Switch will not handle matchmaking, which you're just like.
What the fuck?
And I assume their decision was because they wanted the system to be mobile. But guess what? The fucking DS does it. Like again, like we're getting angry. We gotta get not angry. But it doesn't make any sense. Like the voice chat thing, I could see a small rationale for that. Very small. Matchmaking on lobbies, I'm just like so basically think about it like this. Think about any audience like, okay, Nintendo is supposed to be a family-friendly system, right? All ages. You have an 8, 9, 10-year-old. They may not have a smartphone, right? They're not going to be able to play online, which maybe they shouldn't be playing online anyways. But my point is, like, if you don't have a smartphone, you're locked out of online matchmaking. How does that make any sense?
I mean, or even if you do, because I mean, I know I know like a ton of people in my family or my friend's family who do have kids, or are kids themselves who have smartphones at that age. That's just how things are now. I don't think it's a bad thing, but I mean, even that aside, if you're talking about family friendly, why would you complicate things more by having this whole system work on two separate things and you need to do it separately? The only rationale, and it's not even a rationale, only rationale is that the system is poorly designed. That's literally, I mean, let's just call it for what it is. The system is poorly designed and they don't know what to do, and this was their only solution.
I mean, I guess. Well, we can move on from past this point. I mean, this is probably the most glaring issue of the Switch, is that like I said, the app, you have to have an app to do voice chat, and then they try to do a pitch like, well, more bulky headsets, and I'm like, have you seen the fucking PS4's headset? It's like a earbud with a mic.
And that is completely unrelated. Yeah. You can have a bulky headset on your smartphone, or you can have earbuds on your console. What the fuck?
No,
and I know, like you said, like,
it's marketing.
We shouldn't be getting angry, but like, we need to call bullshit when we see it. I mean, this is bullshit, and they're doing this because they know that. But what I wonder is the same thing I wonder for Bethesda. How long will this last? How long will this people blindly buying shit because it's Nintendo last? How long will they stay in our good graces? I mean, we saw the same thing happen to Steam, for example. I mean, it hasn't affected their bottom line yet, but I mean, look at the PR. Look at how people's relation to Valve has changed in the course of 2 years.
Sure.
From literally people praising Gaben,
right,
to Steam being a joke that we begrudgingly use because there's nothing better. I mean, and who knows where that's going to be in a couple more years if they keep up with this bullshit. But I mean, like, I wonder, even if it's not going to affect their bottom line, which it probably won't, definitely not in the short term, though probably other stuff will affect their bottom line.
Let's move on, though. I mean, I get what you're saying.
I wonder how long Nintendo can keep that up. That's my point with that.
I don't know, because I mean, we're not talking about like Nintendo will cease to exist, but it's
no.
Like okay, the core concept of the Switch, right? A lot of people have said this. First of all, I don't know if this is true. I read it online. Put that in air quotes. But I read that they were saying, when the Switch comes out, we aren't going to drop support for the Wii U. We're going to continue to support that system. What I'm trying to say is they're burning goodwill with gamers. And here's why. And this kind of leads into the next point. they're burning goodwill with gamers because they said that about the Wii U, right? We're going to continue to support it because there's a lot of people that felt like they made an investment, but they didn't. Nintendo didn't uphold their end, which is providing enough good games, providing like making the system make sense. And that's a consumer's fault too. That's not saying it's all on Nintendo. You know, I bought the Wii U. I was somewhat satisfied with it, but at the same time, there were some promises that I thought that they threw out there, like the idea of a Metroid Prime game being played on the Wii U. That was a total lost opportunity, in my opinion, right? And also kind of leading into the next point, that Zelda Breath of the Wild. So my point is, your question is more like how long can they keep burning gamers' goodwill? There will always be Nintendo fans. That there always will be. So they always will have a core audience, but how long, what is a tipping point where the core audience is no longer enough for them to afford to make home consoles? Because the way I see it, they're replacing the Wii U with the Switch, and they probably are trying to test the waters into making like a home console handheld, which the core concept is a good core concept. But like you said, they just hamstring themselves because they make these just insanely stupid design decisions. It's almost like they don't understand like how to design a good console anymore, like what people really want, which goes back to that insularity, right? The tradition, meaning they have a tradition of fucking up online, and with friend codes and all that. The Miiverse was a good idea, but then they scrapped it. It's not in the Switch. And then thirdly, they try to innovate for the sake of innovation, which in this case, it's a kind of a cool concept to have a handheld and a home console all in one. But again, we get to the problems of power, which we'll talk about that later. But my point is going finally back to, burning gamers' goodwill. For one, I really was excited for Breath of the Wild, okay? And here's my problem with that. All right, you saw the tech demo of a Zelda game way back, I don't know, 2000 something. They've been talking about Breath of the Wild for the past 2 to 3 years, probably more. And everyone's been excited for it to come out, right? And then they announced, well, it will come out on the Switch and the Wii U. And then they made a statement, and again, I'm not 100% sure that this is verified, but I'm pretty certain that they made a statement that the game will run the same way on both systems. Okay, fine. So I'm not so upset if I buy it for the Wii U and I can't afford to get the Switch, or it's sold out, which it is right now. However, they came out and said that the specs for the system are 720p, 30 frames per second for the Wii U, and 900p docked for the Switch, 30 frames per second. And the Switch has like better, environmental sounds and a couple other things. So it's better optimization. So now I sit here thinking, all right, so either I play like an inferior version on the Wii U, which I've been waiting for years, or I buck up and pay the $300 and try to find a Switch and then play it on the Switch. And I'm like, well, I kind of...
I like how you just quickly. I like how you said try to find a Switch, because those things are going to be sold out.
They're already sold out. So my point, you get my point. I'm frustrated because I'm like, I've been waiting years for this game, right? And my excitement has died a little bit because I wanted to play it on the Wii U. And that is a promise that they made to gamers. Play it on the Wii U. We'll have, it'll be a good experience. You're waiting. And now we're rewarded for all this waiting with, well, hey, if you want to play it on a better system and you want it to look even better, and some people are trying to give me the bullshit that there's no difference between 900p and 720p. Do you know how to do fucking math?
If you think that, you're stupid.
There's a huge difference. And yeah. I know we say graphics aren't everything, but I still can't help feeling like in the back of my mind, like I'm getting an inferior version if I get the Wii U. So I almost am at the point where I say fuck it and don't buy either and just play Horizon Zero Dawn because I have a PlayStation 4 Pro that I purchased, and I can run a game that looks even better. You get my frustration. It's kind of like a broken promise.
I totally get your frustration, but I have a similar frustration, but I'm coming at it from kind of the opposite angle, and that I really wanted to get Breath of the Wild for the Switch specifically.
Right.
Because even though we had that whole conversation where I was very pessimistic about the Switch and you were kind of a bit more optimistic about it, I really wanted the Switch to be the console that brings Nintendo back to the forefront. We had that conversation. Sure. We had a whole, rant about that, but I really
did link to it.
Boop, if they did this the right way, that Nintendo could have brought consoles back from that whole problem we were talking about in that other episode about, the worst of both worlds with consoles becoming more like PCs and blah, 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 blah. And now all of these decisions have just killed my enthusiasm, any enthusiasm I would have had. And I should have been enthusiastic. Like, you made a lot of good points in that episode. And in a logical world, I should have been the wrong one. I should have been in the wrong for being that cautious and that cynical about something that, for all intents and purposes, looked really good. But the fact that in a lot of ways I ended up being right, which I didn't want to be, is less indicative of, you know, me having a good opinion on it and more indicative of what Nintendo has done to us over the years. And
Are you trying to say
bullshit.
that you want me to say I was wrong? I was wrong.
I mean, yeah, but no.
I was wrong. Put it on the record.
My point is, if anything, I'm trying to diminish my opinion on this, that my opinion should not have been right based on any sense of logical reality, but that Nintendo is Nintendo, and they took what should have been a great thing and they're just throwing it in the mud right now.
Yeah, and I want to put this blanket statement out there. I know a ton of people who are still really excited for it. And I'm not I'm not saying these people are blind or like they're sheep or any of that accusatory stuff. I mean, if you're excited for it, great. But you can't deny the fact that these design decisions don't make any sense, and they're not consumer friendly, more importantly. That's the problem. They aren't consumer friendly. It's not consumer friendly to restrict online matchmaking and voice chat to a phone. At that point, why the hell would you use their voice chat over something like Discord, which you can do anyways, right? And not to mention the fact that we're paying now for online. That's the last thing.
Yeah, what the fuck?
They changed that. And I mean, it was bound to happen. PlayStation did it. Xbox did it. Oh, and this gets better. So it's like Nintendo, like I said, they try and reinvent the wheel, but they just fuck it up. So they're like, okay, we're going to do online. Okay, we're going to make it paid because everyone else does. Fine. We're going to offer free games. Great. How are you going to offer free games? Well, we're going to have a library of SNES and NES games, and we're going to give you one free game a month. Okay, that's cool. But you can only have it for that 1 month, and if you want to keep playing it, you have to pay for the game. What the fuck, Nintendo? You're giving me a worse version of already existing services like PSN and Xbox Live.
And making me pay. And I guarantee you it's going to be just as expensive, if not more.
And I'll do a link to this, but Jim Sterling had a whole video where he talked about Nintendo could have dominated the online market by putting out like 5 NES or SNES titles. They have a whole library of retro games that would appeal to a different crowd than the PlayStation and Xbox crowd. Honestly, it would. Because a lot of retro gamers are the ones that are the Nintendo faithful. And it would be like, hey, we're coming out with an online service. You have to pay for it, but you get access to all these games that you couldn't get anywhere else, right? Because they're Nintendo games. They're SNES and NES titles. That would have made so much sense. It would have gotten everyone excited for the Nintendo online service, and they wouldn't have minded paying. But instead, like I said, they gave us an inferior version of what already exists. I've already thought about canceling my Xbox Live account membership. 1, because I'm having a kid, and 2, I barely ever play it. So why the hell am I going to pay for an additional online service that's inferior? It really doesn't make a lot of sense. I mean, I guess we can't wrap our heads around it. We have no idea who made these decisions. We have no idea why they made these decisions. All we know, at least and I'm not saying it's an opinion, it is fact. It is not consumer friendly. It is anti-consumer to do these types of things. You're just, and I guess, like I said, there will be people that buy it. I mean, hell, at this point, if I bought a Switch, like if I actually wanted to buy one, I probably would not use the online service at all because I'm not paying for an inferior service. And the way I see it, for me right now, I guess I'll put it like this. For me right now, I'm not interested in getting a Switch right away. I'm sure once there are enough titles, there will be good titles. There always are good titles. That's not the issue. The issue is that they have not been making good decisions for consoles since the Wii, and we could really say since the GameCube and N64. But it's just gotten to the point where it no longer even makes sense. Like you said, you have trouble wrapping your head around it. Like it's not like Apple this is on the same level as Apple deciding to get rid of the aux cord. At least that made sense because then you had to buy their fucking dongles and you could say, okay, they're doing it for money. But Nintendo's just like, well, fuck it. Let's do an online service that's worse than everyone else's and get people
That
excited
should be
for it.
that should be the title of this episode.
What?
Nintendo Switch. Well, fuck it.
But I mean, I get it. There are games that are coming out for it that I'm excited for. I mean, to be honest, a lot of people have complained about the launch lineup. And aside from the Breath of the Wild game, I haven't seen any games that I'm super pumped about. I mean, that is a great launch title, certainly much better than the Wii U's launch titles. Um, but it's only one game. And then they have Mario Kart 8 Redux or whatever they're calling it. And that looks
charging
cool.
like $60,
but yeah,
right?
they're charging you $60 for a game that you probably already have, and I paid for the DLC. And people are wondering, are you going to be able to get the DLC for that game? Are you going to be able to buy the maps, the battle maps as DLC for the Wii U? I doubt that very seriously. And then you have Super Mario Odyssey, which admittedly kind of looks like Sonic 2006 in the early parts of that video. And my concern, I love all their I love all the Mario games. There's not been a single one I've played that I didn't like, but I am concerned that the concept is cool of traveling to different worlds. However, like the Mario games benefit from a like a uniform art style, right? Like Super Mario Galaxy had its own art style, and so did Super Mario 3D World, and so did Super Mario 64, and so did you get my point. By going to these different worlds, if you look at it, it kind of like even in the videos, some of the worlds I'm just like, this looks a little weird. Like it doesn't visually mesh with Mario. Like seeing Mario New Donk City, it's kind of like I don't know if I like this. Like, and that might just be my gut reaction. I might change my mind, and the core mechanics might still be good. But at this point, to me, there's no reason to buy a Switch right now. That's my. I'll put that out as my opinion. Really, I don't see a reason to buy the Switch other than if you're a huge hardcore Zelda fan and you feel like paying $300, possibly $370, because that Pro controller is $70. Unless you want to use that whack ass like double joystick plus the charging pad nonsense.
Did you just say whack ass?
I'm sorry.
I love you, Lark.
I love you too. But that's my thoughts. I mean, I know I probably went on a little too long.
No, it was good because like you're it's cathartic to have these conversations.
It is because I mean I'm not saying I'm not saying like the Switch is doomed. It'll sell, but like you said, how long can they keep making bad design decisions, right? And we haven't even talked about the fact that final point for me, and then you can go and I'll just interject. There are no video streaming services on the Switch at launch. What? Like I think even the I don't know if the 3DS does, but the Wii U definitely did. And I'm like, that's just a staple.
Oh yeah, it did.
Like,
why?
Why? What is it like you said?
Like,
I think the explanation
in isolation, that wouldn't have been like if everything else about the Switch was great, I wouldn't have given a shit about that. But it just goes to what we've been talking about throughout this entire episode.
I think you might be right, though.
Of all of this.
I think you might be right that now that you mention it, that the Switch is not really designed to handle any kind of networking. That's a real issue. I think that may be the answer. I don't think we're going to see like they might have like a Switch Plus or something in the future where they do have matchmaking built in. But for this initial version, I really feel like you might be right. Like there may just be a huge problem with the design where they couldn't figure out how to fit it in or something. And there's no way for you, like maybe there won't ever be an option for video streaming services, which is kind of a big deal because people kind of expect that. But again, I mean, like you said, that I really think those 3 bullet points that you brought up are the perfect way to describe the problems with Nintendo. The insularity, the being beholden to tradition, and innovation for the sake of innovation. All right, that's court's adjourned.
I've spoken.
I don't know. What do you have any other thoughts? I mean, did you see any games that you were excited for, like Splatoon 2? Yay, Splatoon. I mean,
okay, I have to talk about Splatoon 2 because there's something that I don't think enough people are thinking about.
Sure.
Aside from the fact that it just looks like more Splatoon, which fine, but okay, let's talk about, in light of everything we just said about the internet and matchmaking and communication, apply that to Splatoon. Let's sink in for a moment.
Yeah.
A moment of silence for that. What the fuck? They're taking one of their what is now basically one of their flagship series that everybody could get behind, and giving you literally an inferior version of what is essentially the same game.
Mm.
What are you even supposed to fucking do in that game with online the way it is? If you want to play Splatoon if you want to make Splatoon worth your money, you're going to have to jump through Nintendo's online hoops.
Mm-hmm.
What the fuck? That's really all I have to say at this point.
Well, I will
You
say
sum this up perfectly. I said some good stuff before, but I got nothing left. I just have
questions.
questions.
Maybe this is the Matrix, and this is all just a giant experiment to see like how pissed off they can make gamers. Like,
if 2016 and 2017 are just the Matrix, I would be so happy, because that means I can wake the fuck up.
I don't know, but I know we ranted and railed, and there's a lot of things that I don't like about the Switch. I still think the core concept, the core premise makes a lot of sense. I do feel like at this point we've already established that our viewpoints are such. I feel like Nintendo is never going to go back to we are competing with Xbox and PlayStation. I think that ship has sailed. They're never going to try and match like multi-platform games in terms of like the newest Call of Duty and the newest Battlefront or Battlefield or whatever. They're never going to come out on the Switch. They're never going to come out on Nintendo console probably ever again, because they've just demonstrated that they aren't interested in trying to be, trying to match their competitors in terms of hardware. So from a business perspective, they've always done better with the handheld market. And I think it made some sense to say, hey, what is our strength? Handheld. Well, what can we do for a console? Well, the Wii U was an abysmal failure from every standpoint, including especially sales. Let's make a system that's all in one. And they have said, we're not going to cut off support for the 3DS. We're not going to bullshit. I give it a year. Once the Switch comes out, if it sells well enough. Well, actually, I've heard a lot of people think that the 3DS is kind of their safety net. If this fails, then they won't just try and make one console in the future. However, I can see if the Switch sells enough, they'll just drop this 3DS support. And from then on, they'll probably just make one system that's very similar to Switch. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe. But I think that was their plan, was trying to replace, kind of trying to tap into their strengths, which is fine. I am a little concerned about the battery life, but when you make such stupid design decisions like we've talked about with the internet, I mean, if you want people to take this thing on the go, especially if you're on the go and you're using your phone, right? That's going to destroy your battery life. Like, you're going to have to bring a portable charger with you whenever you want to play out on the go and you want to do any kind of online, gaming. We've said enough. I think we've said enough. I want to know, and I kind of want to get some people's thoughts, and I'm gonna lead into something slightly different, just Devilman Play general stuff. Since I do a lot of the online interaction, Twitter and Facebook, and handling that. So I want to try and get more engaged. I want to engage people more. I'm talking to you now, specifically, listeners, our gorgeous audience. So please feel free to give us your opinions. We don't want to just hear we know what we think. What do you think? Are you getting a Switch? I mean, like I said, for me, it's a wait and see. It's a wait and see for so many reasons. One, because I'm having a kid in a couple months, and that's the biggest one. And then also because I'm not as excited as I was when that first trailer came out. And that's Nintendo's fault, really. But yeah, I'm going to post this on Facebook and post it on Twitter, and if you haven't, followed us there, feel free to. Because sometimes YouTube's not the greatest way to interact. I don't know. We might play around with some formatted stuff in the future. That's something I'd like to do as well. But this is kind of the end of the discussion for the Switch, and then I have some fun stories, and we'll kind of just wrap it up with some general thoughts. But one thing we're going to try and start sticking to a specific schedule for uploads, which is Sunday at noon Eastern Standard Time. And that's to give you all, a whole week to catch up. I know people are busy. Our episodes tend to be a little bit longer, like 30 minutes, 45 minutes. So, and I'm going to try and be a little bit more consistent with that. And then, like I said, try and be a little bit more active, especially on Facebook. I'm on Twitter all the time, but Facebook is just a whole nother can of worms. But anyways, any other thoughts before we kind of wrap things up? True.
My mind is broken from this conversation. I don't
We
know what
didn't
else
get
I can
any
add that would be
answers.
productive.
We just have more questions. It's
we
like
just- we
like Nintendo
le-
is like the ending of Lost. You're just like, what the fuck?
Right?
Like, did
Nothing's been
did
resolved.
Damon Lindelof design the Switch? Is that what happened? Did he just say let's just make a whole bunch of questions and not answer them? Because that's all they've
That
done.
worked so well the last time.
But anyways, personal story time. So I've mentioned this a couple times. I'm having a child in March. I don't know if it's a boy or girl. Yeah.
Woo-hoo.
And I'm excited, also very terrified, because I was talking to Psycho Trip earlier, and the cost of daycare, especially infant care, is ridiculous. I won't say how much, but it's pretty much the same as our mortgage, so that's great. But my wife was like, okay, this is my day yesterday. Today's Sunday when we're recording this. And my wife's like, okay, we've got a breastfeeding class. Let's go. And I'm like, all right. So I'm in the car and I'm joking. And I'm like, all right. So I'm just going to walk in and say, all right, let's whip him out. She's like, no, you can't say that. So it's not that kind of thing. And of course, I would never say that. So we walk in and, all of this stuff, all this baby stuff, I have a hard time adulting, if that makes sense. And she works with infants and toddlers for her job. So she's used to baby stuff. And I'm just like, this world is so weird. Like, we went to Babies R Us to do gift registry stuff. And there's like they have these like 2-tiered baby pen things, right? And all I could think of as I'm looking at them is they look like the fucking habit trails for like hamsters and gerbils. So I'm like, we're gonna buy our baby a habit trail. I was like, if we get it a water bottle, it'll be like a habit trail, just like hang it up on the side. She's like, you cannot say that out. That's not funny. And I'm like, it is kind of funny.
Baby is kind of like having a pet that slowly learns how to talk.
It's true. And they had like chew toys, which they're called teethers. They're chew toys.
Are you serious?
Yeah, they had chew toys. So getting back to this story, so we go into the breastfeeding class, and I'm like, okay, whatever, be an adult. And then we start looking through the PowerPoint presentation, like they have print off of all the slides. And I'm just like, yep, there's nipples. Yep, that's a weird looking nipple. And then they have fucking 5 slides. No, they have 5 slides on what, like how much piss a baby should piss. And then there's 5 slides on baby shit and like what to look for with baby shit. And I'm just like, oh my God, like,
welcome to fatherhood.
Hershey syrup and pea soup and then just straight like bile. I'm like, this is what my throw up looks like when I'm like really, really, really hungover. And this is baby shit.
Are we really ending the episode on this?
Yeah, on that thought. If you've never thought about baby shit, then you probably don't have kids. But I've learned too much. And I'm just like, wow. There's going to be a lot of...
Moral of this story is
shit.
That Lark... it is shit. That I guess that kind of relates back to the Switch.
Yeah.
But we've come full circle. We've come full circle at this point.
We talked about shitty decisions, and now we're talking about baby
comes
shit.
From something that you love.
What's that?
That at least baby shit comes from something that you love.
True. But I don't know. It's just kind of like it's a weird feeling. And I was trying so hard not to laugh. And like I said, it's only like 4 or 5 people. The teacher hadn't even got there, and she's like, ow, ow, ow. I'm like, all right, fine. I'm going to try and keep it together. But it was really tough. I don't know. Adulting. So that's my story. It's not as exciting as your drunken tale. But
oh God.
It's somewhat interesting. Go look it up.
I kind of love the whole age difference thing we have going on here because we have completely different lives.
Yeah, we do.
Like, you're talking about baby stuff. I'm talking about like my friend passed out drunk and we're trying to make sure he doesn't die.
I mean, I have some stories. I just don't want to know. I want to wait for like the statute of limitations to die out before I tell some of those stories.
Yeah, that's always a good practice.
But in any case, I hope that you all enjoyed this, and just remember, even though we sound like assholes, we're really not. We're assholes with a heart of gold.
I mean, to be fair, I am an asshole, but I mean, Lark's a good person.
I don't know about that. All right,
guys. On that note, we'll see you next week. Lark, you got anything more to say?
I do it again. Switch.
All right, I guess that's it.
Bye.